Hola, ¿cómo estás? Yo, guys, welcome back again today. Today we're going to be talking about Afro Argentines. Afro Argentines are less than 1% in Argentina, according to the Argentine National Census. Some of the population is either mixed with, fully, or identify as Afro Argentine. Colonies within Argentina started around the 1500s. European Spanish slave traders worked slaves in the colonies around Rio de la Plata, Great River area. More enslaved peoples were allowed in the port of Buenos Aires when the city allowed English traders to do so. Many Argentines claim Spanish and Italian descent, with some being mestizo or mixed with European and Amerindian. The total population of Argentina also has 7% African blood. In this area, majority of indigenous populations died off due to conquest, diseases, and mixing. Note, there were different waves of people to the Americas over thousands of years. Just because one group was originally in the area, that same group could have come back to the area long after. The Spanish Empire would eventually start to grant contracts, or asientos, which granted other European companies to import slaves. French, Portuguese, English, and Dutch companies would all take out contracts with the Spanish. Between 1700 to 1787, the British Empire would begin to rise to a higher level. In the War of the Spanish Succession, from 1701 to 1714, the British proved their bravery in fighting strength to the Spanish. Back in Europe, there was a dispute in the Spanish Empire. With the death of King Charles II and no child to take the throne, a conflict war would break out. This war was a struggle between two houses of Spain, the House of Bourbon and the House of Habsburg, which both had dynasty claims. Whoever claimed the throne would also rule over Spain's vast empire and territories. Spain ruled over areas in Europe, the Americas, and Africa. Many European countries would take sides of these two houses. The outcome would be Spain and France losing territories, other European countries taking parts of their territories, and Britain contributing and growing as a colonial empire. With the British Army helping one side of the Spanish conflict, the British helped stop France's expansion and dominance at the time and earned its battlefield reputation. By 1715, the British would have a monopoly on the slave trade in South America. The last contract to be given out would be to the Royal Society of the Philippines in 1787. Until 1784, slaves would be branded like cattle and sold. As Amerindians died off, slaves were used for mining and agriculture. Many slaves can trace their roots back to modern-day Republic of Congo, DR of the Congo, and Angola. Slaves would be sent into urban areas by their masters to sell items that they have made to urbanites. A Argentinian 1778 census showed the highest concentration of slaves were in agricultural areas. There is also a slums, still known as Cambaque, which means Cave of the Blacks. From 1806 to 1810, the city of Buenos Aires grew from around 6,700 African and mulattoes to nearly 10,000. Montserrat would be the most densely populated African community. The African slaves would group themselves in societies called nations. These nations were called African Argentine, Mozambique, Conga, Cabunda, and many more. With Spanish rule and viceroyalty over the Rio de la Plata, Many Africans received Spanish names over time. It is not clear, but some believe that almost 50% of African population fell due to the Argentine War of Independence in 1810 to 1818. Other combined theories, such as the yellow fever epidemic in 1871 and the War of the Triple Alliance, would destroy the population. We can't forget the mixing promoted by the government as well. Unlike most other North, Central, and South American countries, Argentina promoted mixing. The white government came up with a plan to dilute Amerindians and blacks by mixing them with whites. This was to bring them closer to being white, create a white majority, and to bring racially mixed people to full European heritage. Classism also played a part. Some Afro Argentines and Amerindians would marry white Argentines for status, love, or being very few in numbers in an area. The government also promoted, such as Brazil, a mass immigration from Europe and the Middle East to the country. For the Amerindians and Afro Argentines that did not assimilate, the government would forcefully carry out its plans. The conquest of the desert is one example. This Argentine military campaign was directed by General Julio Argentino Roca in 1870. This campaign's goal was to control the Patagonia Desert, where many Amerindian peoples lived. Brutal wars would be fought between the two parties, with the end result being over 15,000 Amerindians captured, bloody losses for both sides, genocides on groups of Amerindians, and assimilation into Argentine country and law. By the late 1800s, most of the Afro-Argentine population was either mixed with European descent or mulatto, or mostly Afro women. As Argentina became a country in 1816, laws would pass soon after. The Freedom of Wombs Law would be passed. This law would state that any child born to slaves would become free citizens, but the slaves would stay slaves. It's also interesting to note that in Argentina, slaves could request to be sold to a new owner and even were allowed to find one. Different militias would be all over the country before the establishment of Argentina. Afro-Argentine militias would start to form around the year 1800, with some of those people being free and some of them not. Eventually, they all became part of the Argentine army, though they were still segregated. Music such as candombe would arise from Uruguay slaves and move to Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. Candombe was played in Argentina by the Afro Argentines as well on a very normal occasion. African roots can also be found in the popular music coming from Argentina called tango. Afro Argentines would live in horrible conditions and face discrimination throughout the country. No universities would admit Afro Argentines until 1853. And in 1857, only 2 Afro children were admitted to the 14 Buenos Aires schools. In 1877, Afro-Argentines started to organize and publish newspapers. The Unionist was a statement of equal rights and justice for all humans, regardless of how they looked. Other newspapers that were published were the Black Democrat and the African Race. With around 20 newspapers published in Buenos Aires in 1880. This would lead to Afro-Argentines entering into politics, like Domingo Sosa. With 2/3 of the population being European immigrants at this time, and the Afro-Argentine population would have a higher percentage of women than men at this time. Rita Montero was a noted singer, actress, actor, and theater performer. She was Afro-Argentine. Much of the population can be found in La Boca and Telmo district of Buenos Aires. In 2013, the Afro Argentines in African Culture National Day was created. November 8th was the day that was chosen. This is due to Maria Rimeros dying in the War of Independence for Argentina. Maria was a guerrilla fighter in the Army of the North. Afro Argentines today have started to grow again, rekindling their culture. Groups like Africa Viva, Sosa Racism, and Grupo Cultural Afro have arisen. Please like the video, subscribe down there, turn on the bell notification so you get all my videos. Add me on all social medias, which is African Network, which is Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok. Each one teach one. Always love each other, always learn from each other. And yo guys, until next time, adios, peace, one love.
So catch me if I fall.